Right, sir? So let us get started. Okay, let me show you what I am trying to represent now. So we have one application. Let us assume that this application is okay. Let me put it as this way. So restaurant, okay, operations. So we have an application which is restaurant operations. Now this application, let us assume that it is written in Python. So let me go with Python logo. Right. Let me put it over here. Right. So this is a Python based application. Now the world is not only Python, right? There are other programming languages also. So let me speak about other application. This is an application. This is also an application. And this application is okay. Order collector application. Okay. So this application can collect orders from customers in the hotel. This application can basically collect orders from Swiggy, Zomato for your hotel, right? So let us assume that that is what it is. And this application, let us assume, is developed in Node.js. Okay, or any language for that matter. I'll be using Node.js. Right. Now, this application and this application are basically used by the same restaurant. Okay, so this is a restaurant. Okay, and let us assume that we are speaking about let me put some color around it. Okay, so this is one organization, and that organization which is using this is, let us assume that Taj Hotel logo. Right, so let me use this Taj Group. So let us assume Taj Group is using these two applications. Now Taj might have other set of applications also. So here we are speaking about an application written in one language and an application written in another language. So how can I enable communication between these two languages? First thing is, I cannot use anything specific to Python. I cannot use anything specific to Node.js, right? So for these two applications to interact, we need a common language, or we need some common mechanism, right? Or we need a data exchange format. So let us get started with this image. Right. Let me go over here. Right. Python 7. Right. So okay, story of Taj Group. Okay, so this is fictional. All right, this is not true. All right, Taj Group has two applications from different vendors. Okay, so one is used for your restaurant operations, the other one is used basically as an order collector, right? So right, and the image which I might have used is Python 7, right? Python 7.png, right? So how can two applications interact with each other or exchange data, right? So it is evident that these two systems needs to interact with each other, right? So for this, what are the different possibilities which we would have, right? So we might need a format. Okay, we might need a data exchange format, okay, which is easier to understand, okay, which is easier to understand. No programming, no particular programming languages assumptions, right? Easy to read. Okay, when I say easy to read, probably by both humans and applications or programs, right? So in here, few years ago, there was a format that was very much widely used, right, which is called as, let me use a different scale over here. Okay, okay, let me go with red. All right, so there was a format which was used earlier, which is basically to interact with applications from here to here. They used to use something called as XML format. Okay, so extended markup language, right? So this is still in use. It is used by many different applications, right, where they use they have their own format of writing this XML. So here we are not speaking about a programming language. Here we are speaking about a data exchange language. So here data has to be represented in this XML format, right? So let us try to look at the story of XML. So let's start with XML, right? So now let me save this image, call this as Python 8, right? Okay, so XML. So how will XML look like? What is that we can do with respect to XML? Let us try to understand that. Okay, so to be very specific, extended stands for extensible markup language. Now XML looks something like this. Okay, so if you want to write an XML, let me open Notepad++, then I'll try to copy the stuff. Notepad++, I can use Visual Studio Code itself, but it's okay. File new, and let me set the language to XML, right? So here they define something called as two languages or two applications should agree to a structure. Two applications should agree to a structure. This can be defined by something called as XSDs, right? XML schema definitions, right? And then I'll write a very simple XML file. Let us assume that, okay, there is an order from Swiggy, right? And we will try to basically tell how do you communicate in XML. Now in XML they would write something like order, right? So for every thing that has start, you have to place it, right? And inside this order you can try to tell what are the elements which you have. So for example, order from Swiggy, right? So close from, so right, date, when was order placed, on, all right? So order was placed on 1st October 2020 at 6 o'clock. So since you have start placed on, you can put placed on over here, right? So this stuff goes on in this way, right? So now items which were ordered. Okay. So the first item which was ordered was item, let me call it as a biryani family pack. Right. Okay. And then they have ordered probably a Coke, something like this. Okay. And then probably you might have some delivery executives details. So delivery okay. Right. Sorry. Delivery, right? So placed on something like scheduled by okay, something like this, scheduled by, let us assume that it will take 15 minutes to complete this order, so it will be 8:15. Okay, right. So this was a format which earlier languages used to use, something like this. Okay, it is still used. I'm not saying that it is a very expired kind of technology. No one is using that. If I'm trying to tell you all of that, that is not true. Okay, right. Still loads of applications use this, right? But the problem is, in this day and world, right, whenever we are using applications like Facebooks and all of that stuff, right, if you try to basically measure the size of this data, okay, XML is very good. It is very good format, very decent format. It has a schema checker. All of that is true. But the whole problem with XML is takes a lot of data for arranging this schema. Okay, so let us assume that if your Facebook was used, or Facebook app which you are using on your mobile uses an XML, you might spend more data on Facebook app, because Facebook needs to communicate to the server, and when it communicates to the server, it needs a data exchange format, and if the data exchange format is XML, it might take more size, so you might be spending more of your data on this, and spending more of data is not a reasonable stuff. So the problem with this XML is, okay, I'll not speak about pros are very good, right? XML data exchanging, XML as a data exchanging format is very widely used, okay, but parsing XML and the sizes of XML, so size of the data which you basically use on internet is called as payload, okay, but parsing XML is difficult, and sizes are okay, sizes of the XML are more or large, whatever you call it, more in size. We can reduce it. So for example, for every tag which you start, there is one closing tag. So if you see, we are typing the same data twice. So the world started thinking about something, okay, why don't we try to use some data exchange format which is simple in nature, which doesn't have all of these complications. So then comes Json. So actually, even Json stands for JavaScript object notation. It doesn't need you to know JavaScript. Okay, the basic purpose for naming this as a JSON object is, when we represent this data, this whole syntax is basically taken from JavaScript. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you need to know JavaScript, right? So data is, okay, represented as name value pairs, right? So there are many other names to this also. You have something called as key value pairs, you have something called as attribute value pairs, you can call it as anything. Okay, so the pros of JSON are, okay, advantages of JSON. Okay, first thing is it is lightweight. Okay, language independent, even XML is language independent. All right, so easy to read and write, this is true, right? Okay, so even XML was a text based format. Prior to this we have binary. I have not even started my discussion with from binary, I have started from text based, right? So why should I use JSON? JSON is very simple. Okay, right? So for example, if I have to represent the same data in JSON, whatever I have written over here, if I have to represent the same data in JSON, okay, let me do one thing. Let me open a notepad and then write it, because I can view this and then write this. Okay, I'll explain you how to come up with this, right? So right now, order from Swiggy, right? All right, let me try to copy certain things. Placed on, okay, why should I use double quotes when I can use single? Because it is all about you can use single quotes, right? Yeah, single or double, they are same. So right, so now single quotes, now comma over here, items, right, right, biryani, family pack, and Coke, right? So then delivery details, okay, right, okay, scheduled delivery by, right, okay, scheduled by, right, 6:15, and arrived by, arrived at, okay, right, something like this. Now this is the format which it JSON looks like. The whole idea of this is eliminate all the clutter, and think of your data in the form of name value pairs, right? So before we understand the stuff, just let us compare this with this. Okay, just because your font is huge, this might be looking in a huge format, but let me, if I basically change my font to something like 16 or right, see, yeah, and the best part is I can write all of this in a very less space. So I'll turn my font back to 24, all right? But the whole idea over here is, okay, here there is lot of space that can be reduced, and it is very simple to write. Okay, so how it is simple to write? Right now it might not sound so much simple to you. So let us learn about JSON. Okay, so that is basically what is this stuff which we are trying to basically look at, right? So here we are representing data. Since we represent data, okay, so data can come in data can be in the form of, right, it can be text, it can be numbers, it can be boolean, right, okay, right, and data can be plural, okay. For example, you are trying to speak about something like colors, right, or complex. What do I mean by all of this? Okay, let us try to take a simple example. Okay, right. Now let us assume that we are trying to write about a movie information. So I am trying to write about a movie called as Avengers. Okay, I want to represent Avengers. So if I basically want to write a data format which exchanges Avengers, okay, let us open Avengers as a movie. So what are the different things which we would have? We would have something like name of the movie is Avengers, right, sorry, right, name of the movie is Avengers, right. What else do we have? Okay, what are the popular characters in that movie, right? So the characters which we have in this movie are probably we have Iron Man, we have Captain America, right, you have Thor, you have Hulk, right. So right, so what is this basic movie, or which what do you call what is the running time of that movie, right? So who has directed this movie, right, something like this. So if you can think of any data, so directed by, okay, so there will be some name, right. So if you want to write any data, you can think of the data in terms of name and value pairs, right. Let it be any data. So now let's try to write information, okay, or think of information, okay, in terms of name value pairs. Okay, so let me basically take the Indian movie. Let me take Baahubali. Okay, so if I have to write the information about the movie, okay, let's try to write information about the movie Baahubali. Info about Baahubali. Right. Good, sir. Now let us try to think what are the different things that come into play whenever we are trying to write about any movie. Okay, so let me go over here, clear the canvas, and let me use a blue pen this time. Okay, so first thing, what is the name of the movie, right? I'm just writing questions. After name, the other thing is what is the cast. Okay, so generally that is represented by starring, right? Okay, and then who has written the story, right? Who is director, okay, right? And probably producer, and then languages in which the movie was released, something like that, right? So these are the different names which we can come across. Okay, right? And then there will be a lot of technical department, right? There will be a huge technical department that works. Okay, technical department. Okay, and then there will be musical team, right? So music who had made this music. Now if you can think of this, okay, we can come across these many kind of questions, right? These are the different questions which we can come across. Now let us try to basically look at the nature of these questions. Okay, so different name value pairs, right? So did I save this image? Okay, I think I need one more. Okay, so after this, which year was it released? Okay, and I think that's more than enough, right? So let us take the screenshot of this, right? Now, okay, this kind of thinking is essential. Okay, we will quickly come to why it is essential, right? So Python 7, we have Python 8. What was Python 8? Right. All right. This is Python 8, and then this is Python 9. All right. Right. Now let us try to understand the types. Okay, yeah, we have name. Name is nothing but a text of the movie, right? Starring characters, we'll have multiple data over here. So you can call this as list, or you can call this as array. Okay, who has written the story? This can be a simple string, right? Who is the director? Okay, so generally the director of the movie is also a string or text, whatever you call it, right? Producer, we have 3 producers actually, so plural or multiple texts, right? Which languages was it made? Again, I'll be writing it as list. Now if you want to write a technical department, there are many technical departments inside this, so I will consider this data to be a complex data. Music, there are different musicians who might have worked, so it is complex. And then if you look out for released, it will be a number. And then how much of collection did this movie made? The box office collection. Okay, that will again be number. And I'm quite sure everyone agrees to this, right? We still have the doubt on what is that complex. Okay, right, I'll clarify on that, but first let us try to have this. Okay, so let me save this data. Good. Now if we want to, right, enter data into the name value pairs, we need to, okay, the data types could be, okay, right. Okay, now let me speak about Json. Json data types. Json supports first, okay, basic Json representation. Okay, so in Json the data is represented represented as, okay, let me write it, name of your, okay, key pair, okay, name and then colon value, right? So generally names are strings, okay, right? So for example, if I want to write examples, I can write something like, okay, I'm writing different name value pairs. So hero, right? The hero of the Baahubali movie is Prabhas, right? Something like this, okay. So name and value, right? Good. So you can write many examples over it. For that value we might have different data, right? So value section might have different values, right? So the value types could be one of string or text, whatever you call it, number, boolean, okay, or it could be a list, or it could be an object. This object is something which I am representing as complex, right? So if it is a string, okay, strings are often denoted in quotes, they are represented in quotes, okay. I am not going to write that, let us use them in examples, right? So list is represented in square brackets, okay. So complex means to describe that object you might need some more key value pairs. For example, if you have to tell address, we cannot tell address as one text format, you have to tell what is your flat number. So to tell that complex type, okay, describing this type might require some more name value pairs. That is basically what it is, right? This is represented in curly braces. Whenever you see a curly brace, that is a JSON object, right? String is represented in quotes, okay. Number you can represent it in any fashion, right? In boolean you will have values of true or false, okay. Now let's write a simple JSON to represent the Baahubali movie. I'll be writing simple, then we will try to make it complex, okay. So let me go to Notepad++ again, because I can do the copy paste, right? So language I am selecting as JSON, only reason for that is it will give me color coding, it will not do anything more than that. So every JSON file generally starts with a curly brace and ends with a curly brace, right? So now over here what I am trying to do is, I'll try to tell that name of the movie is Baahubali the beginning, right sir? So here if you have basically looked at, I have represented the data in the format of text, right? Or rather than name, you can call it as title, that would be a better term. What is the title of this movie, right? Directed, who is the director of this movie? Director of this movie is, you can use single quotes or double quotes, S.S. Rajamouli, right? Simple. So if you see in whenever I am using an object, after I write a name value pair, I am using a comma. Comma represents that here there is something else that is coming over here, okay, right? So then who wrote this movie, right? Story writer, right? So he is Vijayendra Prasad, right? Right. Let us not get more into more details, but fine. Now basically, if I have to write the information on when this movie was released or what was the box office budget, right? So box office collections, right? I heard somewhere around 600 crores, but yeah, right, 600 crores. Okay, 600 crores. I don't want to write too many zeros, so 600 crores, right? Fine. When was this movie released? Okay, I don't remember, sir. So let me go to Baahubali the beginning. It is as, let me go to Wikipedia. Yeah, this is what I'm trying to represent. Good. Right. When was it released? 10th of July 2015. So let me write it as 10th July, sorry, 2015. Right. Now, so this is easy, right? Distributed by and language. So what are the languages in which the movie was released? Okay, so the movie was released in, I have to write multiple stuffs now, multiple languages. So I am writing Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, right, and Hindi. Okay, right, sir. Now if you basically look out for distributed by, here distributed by, there is again a Telugu distributor, Hindi distributor, and Tamil distributor, and Malayalam distributor. So this is a complex data. Distributed or distributors, right? So now to tell this distributors, I need to have more key value pairs. If you see, Telugu is one key and it has a value called as Arca Media Works. Hindi has one, Hindi is one key and it has a value called as Dharma Productions, right? So this is an object, this is an object, and then inside this object I am trying to tell that, okay, in the Telugu the movie was released by Arca Media Works, right? In Tamil, right, there were multiple people who have done it, but I'll try to write only one. I'll be trying to write it as, okay, even if I have to write multiple, I can use a square bracket which represents an array. So Studio Green, right, I'll not be writing full names, right, and it is all about copy pasting, right? So right, and then UV Productions, right, and in Hindi the movie was released by Dharma Productions. So right, and then in Malayalam, Global United Media. So Malayalam, it is Global United Media, right? So if you see, I am writing the comments over here. / stands for comments in JSON generally, right? So this is text, right? Right, it is not a good idea to do that, but I am just showing you, right? So this is text, right? This is text, this is text, right? We don't have any numbers over here, right? So box office in crores, let me make it a number. So 600, Okay, so budget in crores. What was the budget that was basically for this movie, right? So as per this, it is 180 crores. So 180 crores. So I was able to write numbers, right? Yeah. So this is how you write it in JSON. Okay. So this is something which we write it in text. This is very simple format. Okay. Right. Now, since I've spoken about it, the same thing can be written in another format which is called as YAML. Okay. YAML is also, initially it was called as yet another markup language, but slowly what has happened is people have started calling it as it ain't a markup language. So if you look out for this, this is exactly what it is. Now there are many JSON validators, so you can basically go and then try to tell JSON validator online, and then you can paste for your JSON and try to verify whether it is valid or not. So it is trying to tell that, okay, there is something which you have messed up. There is no comma between budget in crores and released, right? Right. So now let me try to use it. Validate JSON. Okay. So if you see, it is not giving any errors now. It is trying to tell that it is a valid JSON. Okay. Right, sir. So this is something which we call anything which is with a square bracket is a list. Anything with a curly braces is an object, is an object, right? So we have other format which can do the same thing. That is something called as yet another markup language, which is YAML, right? So if you write it in one format, creating another format is not difficult, because I'll show you, right? JSON to YAML converters. There are many converters available online. All right. Let us try to convert the same Baahubali, whatever we have written over here. All right. Good. Let me go over here. Paste this. Okay. Right. And then let me unexpected end of. I'm not sure what is the problem, but let me try to copy it again from Notepad. Right. So are you saying we got the format in JSON? Okay. So if you have YAML format, writing JSON is not difficult, right? So now if you go with YAML, this also can be used for data exchanges and configurations, right? So YAML believes in indentation like Python. So in Python, whenever we write blocks, we give some kind of indentation. YAML believes in that. Okay, right? So reading YAML looks more pleasant to the eyes. You just look into it. Rather than JSON, YAML looks more pleasant to the eyes. But if your organization is using YAML, right, then YAML should look pleasant to your eyes. If your organization is using JSON, then the JSON should look pleasant to your eyes. But the whole idea over here is, right, YAML is a little bit easier to look at and to basically understand it, right? So YAML is also collection of name value pairs, right? So let us try to write the same stuff in YAML like what we have done. Okay, so let me go to Notepad++. Okay, and then let me go back to the Wikipedia page of Baahubali movie. All right, so let me get started. Okay, so generally YAML files, let me set the language notation to YAML just for coloring. Okay, if you put 3 hyphens in one YAML, in one file you can write multiple YAMLs. In one file you can write multiple YAMLs. So that if you put 3 hyphens, I can put 3 hyphens over here and start writing another YAML file from here. Hash represents comment. Okay, so here YAML representation B, and then here you can write result YAML representation A. So in the same file I can write two YAMLs, right sir? So but let us not get into that. So in YAML, okay, here also if you have seen, the basic stuff is name colon value, the same story here. Okay, in YAML the data is represented as name colon value, right? So JSON data types, YAML also has exactly the same data types, but the way you represent are different. So let me go over here. The data types for YAML are same as JSON. Okay, so text is represented in quotes, but even if you don't put quotes, it will not complain, right? So first thing which I am trying to tell is name is Baahubali, the beginning, right? Even if you don't put quotes, nothing will go wrong, but generally they recommend putting quotes. So whether you can use single or double quotes depending on what you like. Okay, so I'll put single quotes, right? And then next, who is a director? Text director is again SS Rajamouli. There is no need for you to put any kinds of quotes. It will look at the data and it will if any language which is reading it should parse it. Okay, but representing the data with or without quotes, that's fine. Okay, but in the case of JSON it is mandatory. If you see in JSON, whenever you were trying to represent the data for one key value pair or one name value pair to other name value pair, we have used a comma, but over here we go to the next line, right? And then next, story, who has written the story? If you see for the name, I am not putting them in quotes, right? Story is written by Vijayendra Prasad, right? Okay, right, let me use the same JSON which I have used over here. So box office in crores, 600. Okay, budget in crores, right, 180 crores, right? When was this movie released? This movie was released on, right, so you put it in quotes, right? So what are the languages, right? So over here, whenever you are representing the array items, go to the next line. For each item, give indentation. It could be 2 spaces, it could be 4 spaces, like what you use in Python or the stuff. Languages are Telugu, Hindi, right, Malayalam and Tamil. That's it. So some of the people even do this, okay, right? Even this is valid, but you would see me using this format. Okay, I'll give 2 spaces and then doing. There is nothing wrong in both of them. Both of them represent the same thing. Each list item will start with hyphen. That is basically what it means, right? And then what is the next thing which you have tried to represent? Distributors. Okay, now if I have to tell about distributors, in each language we have distributors. So I'll go to the next line, give some spaces, whether it is 2 or 4 is the choice which you have, and then I'll try to tell that the key value pair is Telugu, and in Telugu the distributors are, right, Arca Media Works, right? Now Hindi, in Hindi the distributors are Dharma Productions, right? But when it comes to Tamil, we have multiple. That's okay. Tamil, right? So multiple list items, so it is a list. So go to the next line, give 2 spaces, hyphen, right, studio green, right. So then this and UV creations, right. So then I will go back to the same character position with Tamil, where Tamil started. So I'll go over here and then I'll write about Malayalam. So in Malayalam we have only one stuff, so that is Global United Media. So if you see over here, this is how simple it is, right? Now if you can write it in one format, using a different format is just fun. Okay, so text is represented in quotes. List items start with hyphens. Okay, right. Object, right, will start at the next indentation level. Next indentation level, like what we have done for distributors. So you can look out for this example, right, YAML, and then we have this, right. So this is basically what it is. Now when it comes to Python, we should understand how to write and read this YAML file or JSON files, right, how to write and read. And generally in most of the cases we will be using this YAML files and JSON files not only as a data exchange formats, but for configurations also, right. So whenever you are creating your application details, you can write configuration files in YAML or in JSON. That is where it becomes extremely important for us to understand. Okay, so hope I have made my points clear. If you have anything which you didn't understand, you can put it in the questions. I'll try to address that. Okay, so as usual, our classroom notes will be posted in python.direct. If you go to menu and then if you go to the classroom notes in probably half an hour from now, you should be able to see our classroom notes over here. Okay, I think this section, it will be removed. It will be removed. We'll be continuing with because it is not actually unit testing with PyTest. It will be, all of this will be moved to Python fundamentals, right? Okay, we will be using unit testing as a part of it, not really as a separate unit, right? Okay sir, so I think that is what I had for today, and this is very much essential. Even if you are a DevOps engineer, you are expected to understand JSON files, you are expected to understand YAML files. If you are a developer, it is quite obvious that you need to know it, right? Even if you are a tester, right, whenever you are configuring your application, whatever you are testing, your configuration files might be in one of XML, YAML or a JSON format. So understanding this is very much important. And not only that, these days REST API has become extremely popular, right? REST API has become extremely popular, and in REST API, whenever we try to communicate with the data, we have to send the data, or the payload will be in the format of JSON format or in the YAML format, right? So YAML uses, sir, JSON and YAML are basically data exchange formats, right? There you can represent your data in the form of YAML or JSON. Okay, right? So YAML is most used in the configuration file world space, but when it comes to JSON, JSON is very popular in your REST APIs or sending data across from clients to servers and all that space, right? But most of the languages are now using either JSON or YAML, even for configuration files, So for example, if you want to change any configuration of Visual Studio Code, right, so file, preferences, settings, right, so all of this is actually a JSON file. They have given the video over here, right? This is settings.json, right? Similarly, whenever you try to create configuration files for your applications, you might basically use this, right? So applications can, so the whole idea of that is that, Khalil, this formats have nothing to do with your programming languages. You can use them in shell scripts, you can use them in languages like C or Java. That is where I've started my discussion, right? So we have gone through and where is that, right? So I'll try to represent that. Okay, now this was the initial thing which we have discussed about Taj. Now Taj application restaurant and order collector can use a JSON or a YAML format to communicate data between them. Right, sir? So I think that is what I had for the day. Tomorrow what we will try to understand is, we will try to understand how to deal with YAML files and JSON files, so that our menu, restaurant's menu, is basically written either in the JSON format or either in the YAML format. That is what we will be trying to understand. Okay, sir. So thanks for your time. We'll meet again tomorrow at the same time to continue our discussion on dealing with JSON and YAML files in Python. Thank you.